Why did they laugh at her? Maybe because the card looked like a relic. Maybe because she looked like someone who didn't belong anymore. But the truth was that none of them were ready for what would happen the moment it touched the scanner. The morning air hung heavy outside the VA facility, brittle with that kind of early autumn stillness, the kind that feels more like a pause than a season. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a scattering of cars, the kind of still life you'd expect at a federal building where the bureaucracy always outran the heartbeat. And then a truck rolled in, old engine, tired but loyal, clicking into silence as the driver eased it into a space. The door opened, boots touched pavement, heavy, deliberate. A woman stepped out. Elena Vaughn, 54. Her name might not have meant much to the guards who'd meet her in a few minutes, but to the right file buried in the right cabinet. Her name was the kind of thing that could change the color of a room. She didn't dress like authority. A windbreaker plain white shirt beneath. Faded jeans patched at the knees. Her boots, though, they carried a history of deserts, mud, and dirt floors. Her hair, thick and silver, was braided low, not out of style but out of discipline. And her walk, that steady rhythm of a limp you don't apologize for, was the kind of quiet scar veterans never mention. In one hand a worn leather wallet, in the other an envelope, stamped in faded ink, Echo 0, eyes only. She stepped through the automatic doors, where a soft hiss gave way to country music filtering in from a radio perched at reception. The sterile beige walls gave no comfort, just efficiency, paperwork, a machine that ran on people instead of fuel. Two security personnel stood at the ID checkpoint, both young, too young to understand what age really meant in this business. One leaned against the counter with a styrofoam cup of coffee, already cooling. The other manned the scanner with the posture of someone who believed nothing important could ever come through this lobby. Private Grant O'Connell, maybe 22, fresh buzzcut, uniform clean, not yet scarred by use. Beside him, Private First Class Drew Kinley, one boot up against the wall, like he hadn't moved in an hour, his eyes already calculating the joke he'd throw the moment she stepped forward. Elena didn't slow, no smile, no small talk, just the steady tap of boots against tile as she approached the desk. She placed the envelope down first, quiet, deliberate. Then she slid a plastic ID card from her wallet, old, faded, the kind of thing you'd find in a war museum. O'Connell picked it up, scoffed. "Wow," he muttered, holding it to the light. "This thing's older than my dad." Kinley leaned over his shoulder. "You sure you didn't dig this out of a time capsule?" Neither of them noticed that Elena wasn't watching them. She was watching the scanner. O'Connell turned the card over. The edges were worn, no expiration date, a red strip clearance that didn't match anything he'd seen. The QR code looked more like static than technology. "What even is this?" he asked, smirking. Elena's voice was calm, almost soft. "That card gets scanned, you'll wish it hadn't." Kinley laughed so hard he almost spilled his coffee. "What is that, a threat, or just boomer poetry?" O'Connell grinned, already moving the card toward the reader. "Let's see if this thing even powers the scanner." He waved it under the light with the flourish of someone expecting failure. The red beam blinked. Once again, the terminal chirped, "Unrecognized format, please retry." "Called it," O'Connell said, sliding it back across the desk with a smirk. "Sorry, ma'am, this one belongs in a museum." He reached for the envelope. "And this, what? Echo 0, some kind of comic book." Elena didn't blink. "Scan it again." O'Connell hesitated. Kinley goaded him. "Come on, let's see if the ghost of the Cold War wants to say hello." So he tried again, slower this time. The scanner didn't beep, it clicked, then it hummed. The screen went black, a flicker of gold. A circle appeared. Slowly, deliberately, a black triangle rotated into view. Encrypted symbols pulsed around its edge like a heartbeat. "What the?" Kinley whispered, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. Text appeared beneath the emblem. Alpha 5 protocol engaged. Red zone authorized identity confirmed. The scanner locked with a sound like a vault ceiling. Both young men stepped back. Elena didn't move. Above the terminal, an amber light began to flash. A shrill alarm cut through the facility, a sound that didn't belong to broken equipment or false fire drills. This one carried weight. Radios came alive. Doors down the hallway slammed shut. Somewhere behind glass, a guard lifted a red handset with shaking hands. "Command," his voice cracked through the line. "We have an Alpha-level trigger at Checkpoint 1. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill." The room froze. Even the janitor, mop mid-swipe, stopped, staring at the emblem on the screen like it was about to detonate. And Elena Vaughn, she simply exhaled, one slow breath like someone who had waited years for this silence. O'Connell swallowed hard, his voice shook. "Maybe it's a glitch." Kinley's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "Glitches don't breathe." The speaker above them crackled. A voice cut through, clipped, urgent. "Checkpoint 1. This is security command. Lock that station down immediately. Step away from the terminal. That is not a standard clearance verification." O'Connell yanked his hand back like the terminal had burned him. Emergency lights cascaded down the hallway, one by one. The building was waking up, but not for its usual Monday morning routine. Kinley's whisper was almost childlike now. "We just broke something, man." O'Connell turned toward Elena. Who are you?" She met his eyes, calm, certain. "You scanned it." And the envelope she had laid on the desk, still unopened, waited. The emblem spun faster. The air in the lobby was no longer casual. It was compressed, heavy, the kind that makes lungs remember how fragile they really are. At that moment the side doors hissed open. Boots hit tile. A man emerged wearing a tactical vest, shoulders broad, jaw set. Sergeant Devin Rock, Facility Security Liaison. He scanned the room in 2 seconds flat and locked onto Elena. "What the hell is going on here?" O'Connell's words stumbled. Her ID card, it triggered something. The scanner locked, the system. "She told us to scan it," Kinley added, voice tight. "We thought it was fake." Rock's eyes shifted to Elena. His tone dropped. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify." Finally she spoke, calm, even. "I've already been verified, you're just catching up." That line hit like a dropped weight. The emblem pulsed brighter on the monitor. And somewhere deep in the building, someone whispered the words that would change everything. "Courtesy protocol. Do not detain. Repeat, do not detain." The kind of instruction no one gave unless the figure standing in front of you outranked everyone in the building. The young soldiers had laughed minutes ago. Now their hands trembled. And Elena Vaughn stood in the center of their storm, as if she'd been waiting for this moment all her life. But who was she? And why did the system remember her when the world had forgotten? The answers would come, but not yet. Not until the world was ready. What kind of clearance tells an armed escort not to detain you? That was the question running through every soldier's mind as the building locked down around her. Elena Vaughn walked between 2 MPs like she had walked hallways just like this before. Not escorted, not arrested, just accompanied. Her limp gave her stride rhythm, not weakness. Her braid brushed against her windbreaker. Her boots tapped steady on the tile. She never looked left, never right, and she never looked back at the 2 young men who had laughed only minutes ago. They didn't matter anymore. The corridor stretched ahead, fluorescent lights flickering on in succession like the building was bowing to her presence. The MPs flanked her without touching her. Their sidearms remained holstered, their pace measured to hers. Not control, respect. It unsettled the people watching from behind glass. In the command center upstairs, technicians whispered over each other as screens filled with encrypted overlays they had never seen before. The emblem still spun on the locked terminal in the lobby, transmitting something no one dared interrupt. Alpha 5 trigger confirmed, one analyst muttered. His fingers shook over the keyboard. Identity authenticated, cross-verifying with DC preclearance grid. Another voice, nervous, asked, "Is she on any list?" The first analyst looked up, his voice barely more than a whisper. "She is the list." Meanwhile, Elena entered a glass-walled room on the second floor. The MPs stopped outside, their presence fading into the hum of urgency surrounding her. Inside she sat, alone, hands folded, calm. The emblem pulsed on the wall screen behind her, gold and black, rotating with the inevitability of something ancient stirring. No one touched it, no one even tried. Technicians passed by, peering through the glass as if she were a ghost behind a museum case. Some of them whispered, others only stared. She didn't move, she didn't speak, she waited. Because she knew what was coming. The stairwell door burst open. A presence swept in before a voice even spoke. Silver oak leaves glinted on the collar of a crisp flight jacket. Colonel Marina Keene. She didn't walk in, she took the room. Her eyes swept the glass command center, dissecting every movement in seconds. Then she stopped, her gaze locked onto Elena. Recognition flickered, not surprise, not fear, something heavier. She entered the room, the door hissing shut behind her. "Elena," she said. Elena looked up, still know how to make an entrance. Keene's jaw flexed, still know when one's needed. The two women faced each other across the table. No handshake, no smiles, just history hanging in the air like dust caught in sunlight. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, and in that silence, something unspoken moved. Finally, Keene placed a slim black folder on the table. The top sheet was more redaction than text. At the corner, handwritten in faded ink, Echo 0, reactivated. "I thought they shut it down," Keene said. "They tried." Elena's tone was even. "Some things don't stay buried." Keene leaned forward. "You knew what would happen when you scanned that card." Elena nodded. "It was time." "For what?" "To remind them that some clearances don't expire just because memory does." Keene studied her face, searching for bitterness, regret, fatigue, but there was only calm. She sighed, sitting down at last. "You're sitting on a landmine, Elena." "I've sat on worse." The door chimed again. A civilian in a gray suit stepped inside, thin and jittery, holding a tablet like a shield. "Colonel Keene," he said, "Administration just confirmed her Alpha 5 is authentic. It pinged the preclearance grid in DC. They've flagged it straight to National Command." Keene's eyes narrowed. "So they know she's here." They knew the moment that card lit up. The civilian set the tablet on the table and left quickly, like he didn't want to stay in the blast radius. Keene didn't touch it. She looked at Elena. "Why now?" Elena's gaze was steady. "Because someone downstairs laughed, and then they scanned something they weren't supposed to. They needed to remember what respect looks like." Keene leaned back, exhaling. "You could have called me ahead of time, walked in with a federal escort, but no. This," she gestured at the alarm still echoing faintly through the building, "this was theatrical." "No," Elena's voice was sharper now. "This was tactical." From her jacket she pulled a second envelope. Not the old one marked Echo 0. This one was newer, sealed in crimson ink, stamped, "For command eyes only." She placed it on the table. Keene didn't reach for it. "Am I going to regret opening that?" "You'll regret not opening it." The colonel hesitated, then peeled the seal. Her eyes scanned the document once, then again. Her expression shifted, hard. Outside the glass, a junior officer caught sight of her face and quickly stepped away. Keene slid the paper back into the envelope, her hands suddenly restless. "Who else knows?" "No one," Elena said, "but someone will try to find out." Silence fell. The only sound was the low hum of the emblem on the wall, spinning like the heartbeat of a buried machine. Keen's voice lowered. You're going to bring the whole damn thing back online. Elena's reply was immediate. It never went offline, they just stopped looking. The colonel stood, packing now. You've started a fire. I lit a flare, Elena corrected. If the forest is dry, that isn't my fault. Keen's laugh was short, humorless. I missed you. You never had to, Elena said. A flicker of a smile tugged at her mouth, faint but real. The emblem pulsed brighter behind them, as if listening. From the hall, an aide's urgent voice called out. Colonel, oversight just arrived. They weren't scheduled. Keen's brow furrowed. Send them up, but stall. She turned back to Elena. You've put me in the middle of something I can't contain. No, Elena said softly. You've been in the middle the whole time. You just didn't know it. The door opened. 2 men entered. One in a plain navy suit with mirrored glasses, the kind who didn't need to show credentials. The other with a briefcase chained to his wrist. Keen stepped into their path. You'll speak to her with respect. She's not a subject. She's a former operative with active legacy clearance. The man in the suit didn't flinch. We'll need the envelope, the file, surveillance footage, and her for transfer to Andrews. You're not taking her anywhere, Keen said flatly. She activated Alpha 5. That puts her under federal custody. No, Keen snapped. That puts you under advisement. The moment that emblem lit up, this building became her jurisdiction. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Elena finally stood, calm, straight-backed. Her limp more pronounced after the long sit, but she carried it with the same dignity she always had. She looked at the man in the suit. You don't outrank me. You never did. The briefcase carrier cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, we're just here to verify the contents of the envelope. Nothing leaves without record. Keen considered, then nodded once. Fine, but you read it here, in my presence. They gathered at the table. Elena didn't flinch as they opened the envelope. Their eyes scanned the page. Their expressions shifted, once, twice. The man in the suit paled. This is live. Yes, Elena said. We're not prepared. You never were. Her words dropped into the silence like stones into water. And outside the glass, the facility buzzed with fear it couldn't name. Because what Elena had carried in her jacket pocket wasn't just a relic, it was a reminder. A reminder that some ghosts don't fade. They wait. And sometimes, they walk back in through the front door. What happens when the system sees someone it thought was gone, not erased, not retired, but gone? That was the question filling every room in the VA facility, as Elena Vaughn sat at the edge of the storm she had just awakened. The federal men had left with pale faces and tight jaws. They carried no copies, no photos, only the weight of what they'd read inside the crimson-stamped envelope. And if weight could crush, they were already breaking beneath it. Colonel Marina Keen closed the door behind them, the hiss sealing out the chaos. Her eyes lingered on Elena, who remained seated with folded hands, posture unyielding. You know what this means, Keen said at last. Elena didn't blink. I know what it remembers. The emblem still pulsed on the wall, each rotation a reminder that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Downstairs, Sergeant Devon Rock stood before a bank of monitors. Perimeter sensors showed nothing unusual, but network traffic had spiked in the last 15 minutes. Agencies were querying the clearance code. Agencies that weren't supposed to know it existed. They're sniffing, he muttered. Beside him, an analyst frowned. That's impossible. Alpha 5 was air-gapped, archived, burned from the system. Rock stared at the feed from the command room, where Elena sat like a figure carved from history. She didn't come here to be found, he said. She came here to be seen. Outside, a black SUV rolled to the entrance. Diplomatic plates. 2 men exited. One in the standard Navy suit, badge unseen, mirrored sunglasses reflecting the world like he never had to look at it. The other carried a briefcase chained to his wrist. The lobby went silent as they walked past. O'Connell and Kinley, the two young guards who had laughed earlier, watched them with wide eyes. "That's DC," O'Connell muttered. "That's not VA command." Kinley didn't answer. His hand still trembled from the moment the emblem first flared to life. Upstairs, the oversight men entered the glass-walled command center, but Colonel Keene was ready. She stood arms crossed, her presence holding the room steady. "We'll be debriefing the subject," the man in the suit said without preamble. Keene's voice cut like steel. "She's not a subject. She's a former operative with active legacy clearance. You'll address her as such." The man didn't blink. "We'll need her transferred. We'll need full access to Echo files." "No," Keene stepped closer. "You don't outrank Alpha 5, you report to it." The tension cracked the air like static. The men glanced at each other, then at the emblem pulsing brighter on the wall, as if it too was listening. Inside the smaller conference room, Elena finally stood. She moved with the weight of years and the patience of someone who had waded through worse storms than this. Her limp was more noticeable now, but it wasn't weakness. It was history. She looked at the man in the suit, cutting him off before he could speak. "I know who you are. I know your clearance. Don't waste my time pretending otherwise." He swallowed hard, nodded. For once, he was the one who listened. Keene opened the crimson envelope again, laying the page flat between them. "You read it once. You read it again. Do you understand what this means?" The men bent over it, scanning the lines. Their faces drained of color. This is operational," the aide stammered. "Yes," Elena said. "But it was dormant, buried." "No," her voice was quiet, but it silenced the room. "It was waiting." The air changed after that. Even the fluorescent lights seemed harsher, like the building itself realized it was holding something it couldn't contain. Far above them, in an office in DC, a general removed a file from a drawer he hadn't touched in 13 years. The cover bore a name, Elena Vaughn. The photo inside was grainy, a desert operation never recorded, never acknowledged. A younger woman, sharp-eyed, standing in dust and aftermath. The general stared at it for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone. "Get me the Joint Chiefs." At the Pentagon, 5 floors beneath the surface, a secure room buzzed with voices that usually stayed quiet. A dossier marked Echo 0, reactivated, lay open on the table. "She shouldn't even be in circulation," one voice said. "She isn't," another replied. "Not officially, but her clearance pinged every secure node when she scanned that card. That was no accident." General Howard, the most senior man in the room, tapped the folder. "Every agency with a black budget wants a piece of her. The question is, does she still have operational value?" The room fell silent. Back at the VA facility, Elena sat in front of a memorial wall, glass etched with names, hundreds of them. Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, some she knew, most she didn't. Her hand lifted, touching a name halfway down the 4th column, Warrant Officer James Rock. Behind her, Sergeant Devin Rock approached slowly. His voice carried a question he already knew the answer to. "You knew him?" Elena nodded. "Bagram, 2006. Devin's throat tightened. "My uncle. He never talked much about deployments. Just said there was a woman on his team who saved them more than once. Called her the ghost who walked." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "He was the only one who could make me laugh during debrief." Devin swallowed hard. "He always said your name with respect." They stood in silence together, generations linked by loss and memory. Finally, Devin asked the question that had been burning in him since the alarms first sounded. "Why now?" Elena's answer came slowly, softly. "Because forgetting has a cost, and some debts are long overdue." Upstairs, Keene's voice filled a secure line. "They're going to push for retrieval. You know what that means." The gravel-throated reply came back without hesitation. "I do. But if they push too hard, they might reawaken more than just her. She's not looking to fight, Keen said. She's looking to remind. That's what makes her dangerous. At the outer security post, Kinley sat alone. His coffee had gone cold, his sleeves rolled up. His hands shook as he replayed the recording on a small monitor. The moment the scanner lit up, the moment everything changed. O'Connell sat beside him, silent. He handed Kinley a bottle of water. "You all right?" Kinley shook his head. "I think I laughed at a nuclear warhead and lived." O'Connell didn't argue. He just stared at the screen. "You think she'll stay?" Kinley asked quietly. O'Connell's answer was just as quiet. "You think she ever really left?" In a quiet room below the command center, Elena sat again. This time 3 folders lay in front of her, each stamped top secret, each bearing a different seal. Keen joined her. "They want to know what you remember." Elena didn't look up. "I remember enough." "You'll be debriefed, interviewed, scrutinized." "I've been through worse." Keen's voice softened. "Do you want to do this again?" Elena finally lifted her eyes. "No, but I will, if it spares someone else from carrying what I already survived." Outside the two-way glass, a young lieutenant whispered to his supervisor, "Who is she really?" The answer was quiet. "She's the kind of story we stopped telling because we weren't ready for the ending." Later that day, Elena walked back out into the sunlight. Same boots, same braid, same silence. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. Everyone knew she wouldn't be forgotten. But the world wasn't finished with her. Not yet. Because miles away, a black file had already been reactivated. A system untouched for 12 years. Its first entry blinked into existence. Subject Vaughn, Priority Watch, reactivation confirmed. And beneath it, one line of text no one had seen in over a decade. Echo Zero may have survived. What kind of place do they build for secrets they don't want found? Not a base, not a prison, something quieter, something colder. They called it Site Gray. Elena Vaughn didn't ask questions when the black SUV pulled up at the private terminal in Dallas. She didn't ask when the man with a military spine and civilian clothes introduced himself as Agent Rowan. She didn't ask when he said only 2 words, "Site Gray." She just nodded and followed. The drive was long, silent. The kind of silence that eats at men trained to fill it with chatter. But Rowan didn't chatter. He studied her profile like it was a map. She kept her gaze forward. When the SUV rolled past the tree line into Virginia woods, the air changed. Cameras blinked silently in the branches. No signage. No guards in visible uniform. Only figures at the perimeter with no insignia, no names. Clearance badges glowed blue when scanned. "Still exists," Elena murmured as the blast doors opened. Rowan's glance carried something like respect. "It does now." They stepped into a corridor that smelled of new paint and old ghosts. Fluorescents hummed overhead. The walls seemed too narrow, too intentional, as if built for function without comfort. At the end, thick double doors waited. "They'll want to debrief you first," Rowan said. "They already did," she replied. He gave a small smile. "This is a different kind of room." The doors hissed open. Elena stepped into a circular chamber ringed by monitors. 5 figures sat in shadow, anonymous. Their voices carried no accents, only authority. "Miss Vaughn," the one in the center said, "you understand what Phase 2 entails." "I understand what you think it entails," Elena said. "And what do you believe?" Her eyes flicked across the room. "I believe this country remembers what it wants and buries what it can't face. Something clawed its way back from the dirt. That's why I'm here." "Are you willing to serve again?" another voice asked. She shook her head. "Wrong question." "Then what's the right one?" Elena's voice was steady. "Are you ready for what I remember?" The chamber went silent. Outside, Rowan waited. His eyes caught hers as she stepped back into the corridor. He didn't ask what happened inside. He didn't need to. That night a room was assigned to her. Spartan, bed, locker, desk, no window. Inside the locker a uniform waited. Black, no rank, no flag, no name. Only a patch at the shoulder, a golden triangle inside a circle, the emblem that had frozen the VA facility days before. She stared at it for a long time, then she put it on. Morning came fast. A hangar door opened into a cavernous chamber where rows of unmarked equipment lay beneath tarps. At the far end, 6 young operators waited, nervous, green. They straightened when they saw her. One of them, the youngest, stepped forward. His voice was careful. "You're her, aren't you?" Elena nodded. "We read about Echo," he said, "thought it was a myth." Her eyes locked onto his. "Then you haven't read enough." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Then Elena spoke again. "We don't fight to be remembered. We fight so others never have to be." The recruit stood straighter. Across the compound, status lights blinked. Phase 2 had begun. But not everyone welcomed the awakening. At Langley, analysts stared at a heat map lighting up for the first time in 14 years. "Delta 9 is active again," one whispered. "That's impossible, it was sealed." "No, it was sleeping." At the Pentagon, a general slammed his fist on the table. "She's reanimating cold systems. We buried this program for a reason." A younger analyst swallowed hard. "But it's working." "That's what terrifies me." Back at Site Gray, Elena sipped black coffee in silence. The tablet beside her bed blinked once. A dot appeared on the map. Coordinates. A code name, Reclamation. She read it twice, stood. Outside, the 6 recruits were already waiting. They had learned fast. Vaughn didn't wait. She didn't repeat herself. Rowan met her at the tiltrotor. "Delta 9, he said. "Show me the manifest." He handed her a thin folder. She flipped it open. "Project Signal Vault. Status, awaiting access." She closed it, no hesitation. "We move." The transport lifted silently into the pre-dawn sky. Hours later, they touched down at the entrance to Delta 9, a facility hidden beneath vines and rust. Forgotten, or so the world believed. The air was still, too still. The team swept forward, weapons low but ready. Elena didn't take the center. She didn't need to. She walked ahead, unflanked, her stride carrying something the recruits couldn't name. The gate opened with no resistance. Too easy. Inside, backup power hummed faintly. The air smelled of dust and metal. "This place should be dead," the youngest recruit whispered. "It was," Elena said. Her voice echoed against steel walls, until something remembered it was alive. Corridors stretched ahead, tight and metallic. Their boots echoed in unison. At the third junction, lights flickered green. A soft chime rang out. Echo unit recognized. Reclamation in effect. The recruits froze. Elena didn't. She stepped forward. "Initiate Protocol Sigma 9." The doors hissed open. Beyond them, a war room waited, untouched by time, terminals active. Maps displayed conflicts long over, some never admitted to. And on the central wall, the emblem, triangle within a circle, but inverted, red. "Systems are booting themselves," one recruit muttered. "That's not possible." "It's not uploading," Elena said softly. "It's remembering." She laid her palm on the secure console. Identity confirmed. Vaughn Elena, access level black, non-expiring. The room came alive. Old mission logs, disavowed operation, internal messages. And one blinking alert at the bottom. Remains located, 6 unit vessels preserved. The recruits exchanged uneasy looks. "What does that mean?" one asked. Elena didn't answer. She followed a narrow stairwell down. At the bottom, a sealed chamber opened without a code. Inside stood 6 containment units, not coffins, not cryopods, something in between. Each bore a name: Ghost, Lynx, Vector, Caliber, Atlas, Warden. Her hand rested on the one marked Warden. Her voice lowered to a whisper. You waited longer than any of us. Behind her, a recruit asked, Are those bodies? No, Elena said. Her eyes never left the chamber. Their legacies, memories, whatever Echo couldn't risk deleting. One by one, she activated the vaults. A low vibration rolled through the floor. Above them, towers that hadn't moved in 14 years began to turn. At the Pentagon, a red phone rang. Yes, a general said, his face pale. Echo Zero is reactivating hardware. They've awakened Delta's command AI. We thought it was dismantled. The analyst on the other end whispered, It wasn't dismantled, it was dormant. The general closed his eyes, and now it's learning again. Back in Delta 9, Elena turned to her recruits. You've seen now, Echo wasn't built to last, it was built to survive collapse, and it did. Why us? The youngest asked. Her gaze fixed on him. Because you're standing here, because when the silence fell, you stayed. That's the only test Echo ever cared about. They nodded slowly, then all at once. Above them, the central display shifted. Phase 3 incoming. Elena whispered to herself, too soft for anyone else to hear. It begins again. What do enemies do when they realize you're not gone? They come looking. Sometimes not with armies, not with bombs, but with whispers, with shadows. The first whisper came 12 hours after Elena Vaughn's team walked out of Delta 9. In the comms room at Site Gray, a screen flickered to life without request. No operator touched the console. No clearance approved the connection. It just appeared. A black sigil pulsed against the static, not the circle and triangle of Echo Zero, something sharper, angled, the shape of a blade crossing through a spiral. Agent Rowan leaned over the console, his jaw tightened. Scion. The recruits gathered behind him, exchanged uneasy glances. What's Scion? The youngest asked. Rowan's answer was clipped. The reason Echo Zero was buried. Before anyone could ask more, the audio feed crackled. A voice slid through the speakers, low, distorted, almost amused. Ghosts shouldn't walk, Elena. The recruits froze, their eyes shifted toward her. Elena didn't move. She stood at the edge of the room, arms folded, her expression unreadable. The voice continued. You carried the card, you lit the emblem. Did you think Scion wouldn't notice? Her reply was calm, even. I was counting on it. Static flared, then silence. The screen went black. Rowan turned sharply. They're probing. That connection wasn't routed through any satellite we control. They tunneled through old Echo channels. That means they never dismantled Scion's framework. One of the recruits swallowed hard. So, they were waiting for us. No, Elena said softly. They were waiting for me. The weight of her words sank in. That night the recruits gathered in the mess hall, their voices low, nervous. Did you see her face? One whispered. She didn't even blink, another said, like she knew that voice. She did, Rowan said, stepping into the doorway. His voice carried authority but also warning. She's the last surviving operative from Echo's core team. Scion wasn't just a rival program. It was the mirror image, built in the same shadows, different leash. Then why bury both? The youngest recruit asked. Rowan's eyes narrowed, because Echo broke the leash, and Scion didn't. The room fell silent. At 300, alarms cut through Site Gray, not blaring sirens, subtle, precise, the kind that mean infiltration. Elena was already awake. She stepped into the corridor as Rowan barked orders into his comm. The recruits scrambled, adrenaline sharp in their veins. Infrared sensors showed movement at the perimeter, figures slipping past cameras without tripping them. Too disciplined, too quiet. Scion, Elena said, her voice steady. Rowan glanced at her. How do you know? She adjusted the strap of her weapon, eyes scanning the monitors. Because I taught them how. The recruit stared at her, shock, fear. They were ours, she explained, once until they were. The infiltration broke into motion. Shadows moved through the outer compound with surgical precision. No wasted steps, no noise. The recruits took their positions, hearts pounding. One whispered a prayer. Another checked his magazine twice. Elena moved differently. Not frantic, not rushed. She flowed, every step measured, every breath controlled. When the first Scion operative breached the inner hall, she was waiting. The silence broke with two suppressed shots, clean, surgical. The recruits flinched, she didn't. Eyes forward, she told them. Don't think about what you hear. Think about what's left standing when it's done. Her calmness was unnerving. It wasn't bravado, it was memory. By dawn, the compound's perimeter was secured. The infiltrators had vanished, leaving only two bodies behind, both carrying equipment too advanced to be freelance. Rowan crouched beside one of the packs, unzipping it. Inside, a small device no larger than a hand. Its screen pulsed faint red. "What is it?" the youngest recruit asked. Elena's voice carried the answer before Rowan could. "A locator." "For what?" "For me." The recruits exchanged uneasy glances. Rowan muttered a curse. "They've marked you." Elena finally let her gaze shift to the rising sun outside the blast doors. Her voice was low, reflective. "They already did, a long time ago." In Washington, a council of gray-suited men reviewed the breach report. Their faces were grim. "They've engaged Scion." Scion wasn't supposed to exist. Neither was Echo, yet here we are. General Howard leaned forward, his voice heavy. "The question isn't whether they exist, it's which one survives this time." At Site Gray, Elena stood in front of her recruits, the locator device on the table between them. "They'll keep coming," she said. "Not with armies, with cuts, with whispers, deaths that don't make the news." The recruits were silent. "You want to understand, Echo. It's not about medals. It's not about flags. It's about carrying the weight until it breaks you and still standing after." She picked up the device, crushing it in her hand. Circuits sparked, the light dying. "But you don't carry it alone. Not anymore." Her eyes scanned each face, searching, testing. "You want to walk away? Do it now. No shame, no judgment, because the next time Scion comes, they won't miss." The silence was heavy. No one moved. Finally, the youngest recruit spoke. His voice cracked, but his eyes were steady. "If you're still standing, ma'am, then so are we." Something flickered across Elena's face. Not pride, not relief, something older, something almost like sorrow. She nodded once. "Then you'll learn what it costs." Later that night, alone in her quarters, she stared at the old ID card on the desk. The one that had lit the scanner. The one that had pulled her back into this. Her reflection stared back from the scratched plastic. Silver hair, lined face, eyes that had seen too much. For the first time since she walked into the VA, her hands trembled. She closed her eyes and whispered a name no one else could hear. "Warden." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with memory. And with warning. Because somewhere in a chamber Scion had kept buried, another emblem pulsed to life. Not Echo's circle, not their inverted red. A hybrid, a fracture. The war between ghosts was only beginning. How do you break someone who's already been broken once? You don't hit them with bullets, you hit them with memory. That was Scion's next move. It began with whispers, not through radios or intercepted comms, through the compound itself. Screens flickered at Site Gray. Cameras showed hallways no one was walking in. Audio channels filled with voices that didn't belong. At first, the recruits thought it was a glitch. Systems old, patchwork, but Elena knew better. She stood in the control room, her hand resting lightly on the console. Her face didn't change as the speakers filled with a voice she hadn't heard in 20 years. "Warden, you left us." The recruits froze. The name didn't mean anything to them, but the way Elena's jaw clenched did. Rowan barked, "Kill the feed." "No," Elena said quietly. "Let it play." The voice again, low, pained, full of accusation. "You promised. You swore we'd all walk out, but only you did." The youngest recruit whispered, "What is this?" Elena didn't answer, not yet. The screen shifted. Grainy footage appeared. A desert outpost. Explosions in the distance. Figures in black uniforms moving through dust and fire. One of them, younger, sharper, unmistakably Elena Vaughn. The recruit stared. The footage cut. The screen went black. Then words appeared in red. "Sins don't retire." Rowan slammed the console, cutting the feed at last. "They're pulling archive ops, trying to shake you." But Elena didn't move. She stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the empty screen. She whispered almost to herself, "That wasn't an archive, that was a recording." The recruits exchanged uneasy looks. Later that night in the mess hall, the tension was thick. The recruits sat silent around the table, trays untouched. Finally, one of them broke the silence. "What did they mean? Who was Warden?" Elena entered just as the question hung in the air. She set her mug of coffee down, her movements deliberate. "Warden was one of mine," she said simply. "The strongest of us, the one who carried more weight than any of us could." "Then what happened?" Her eyes dropped to the table. "We left him behind." The recruits shifted uncomfortably. One finally asked, "Your fault?" Her silence was answer enough. Rowan entered then, cutting the moment short. "Command's aware. They're not happy Scion has this kind of access. They want us to relocate." "No," Elena said. "No," Rowan frowned. "They're in the walls, Elena. You saw it. If they can bleed your past into our systems, they'll turn this place against us." Her voice was steady, quiet. "If we run now, we'll never stop running. Site Gray is the last ground Echo still owns. We hold it, or we prove Scion right." Rowan didn't argue further, but his eyes lingered on her with something more than frustration. It was worry. The next strike didn't come with soldiers or operatives. It came at dawn. A recruit woke screaming. His bunkmates rushed to his side. He clawed at the sheets, eyes wide, muttering words that didn't make sense. "Warden here, he said I'd pay. He said we all will." Elena arrived within minutes, her presence filling the room. She crouched beside him, her hand steady on his shoulder. "What did you see?" she asked softly. His breath came ragged. Him standing at the foot of the bed, face burned, eyes gone, he said, "We're not Echo, we're just kindling." The room was silent. Elena's expression didn't change, but her hand tightened. "You didn't see him. You saw what Scion wanted you to." But it felt real. His voice cracked. It was real. She met his eyes. "I know." The recruits exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, "She said that like she's seen it too." Rowan pulled her aside afterward. "They're unraveling. These are kids, Elena. You put ghosts in front of them, they'll break." Her eyes were tired now, but still unyielding. "Then they're not Echo." "Don't do that," Rowan snapped. "They're not you. They don't carry what you do. If you push too hard, you'll bury them before Scion does." She didn't answer, not because he was wrong, because he was. That evening the recruits trained in the hangar. Live fire, movement drills. Elena observed from the catwalk. Her limp was sharper today, but her gaze cut like glass. The youngest recruit struggled, missed targets, hesitated at corners. After the drill, he stood before her, sweat running down his face. "I'm not built for this." Her voice was calm. "Neither was I." He shook his head. "No, you're something else. You're like stone." Elena's eyes softened just for a moment. "Stone cracks. You just don't see it when it does." The recruit blinked. He didn't know what to say. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't mistake silence for strength. The weight hurts. It always hurts, but you carry it anyway. That's the only difference." The boy nodded. though the fear in his eyes hadn't left. That night, Elena sat alone in her quarters again. The old ID card lay on the desk. She stared at it, her reflection fractured across its scratches. Her thoughts drifted backward. Dust, smoke, screams. Warden's voice over comms, broken but steady. Go, leave me, that's an order. She had obeyed, and she had carried the weight every day since. Her hand trembled, just once. She clenched it into a fist until the tremor stopped. Outside, the compound buzzed with tension. Recruits whispered about the vision, about Warden, about whether Elena was hiding more than she revealed. Rowan sat in the control room, staring at the black monitors. "They're breaking us without firing a shot," he muttered. But Elena, standing in the doorway, answered quietly, "They're testing if we still remember who we are." The room fell silent. And deep beneath Site Gray, in Delta 9's vault, the red emblem pulsed once, then again. As if something locked inside was listening. As if it was waiting. How long can you haunt someone with shadows before you step out of them? For Scion, the answer was simple, just long enough to make sure fear had settled in first. The strike came at midnight. Site Gray had gone quiet, the recruits restless in their bunks, Rowan half asleep in the command chair. Elena hadn't slept at all. She never did, not fully. She sat in her quarters, boots laced, rifle across her knees, as if she had been waiting for the knock no one wanted. It didn't come as a knock, it came as thunder. A concussive blast tore through the outer fence line, rattling the compound like an earthquake. Lights flickered. Alarms wailed. Dust shook from the ceiling. Rowan's voice barked over the comms. "Contact, East Perimeter breach, multiple hostiles inbound." The recruits scrambled from their bunks, half-dressed, weapons clutched with shaking hands. Elena was already in the corridor, her limp carrying her forward without hesitation. She didn't run. She didn't have to. Every step was measured, steady. When she entered the command room, Rowan was pale, headset pressed tight. Drones, 6 of them, coordinated with ground infiltration. This isn't probing, this is surgical. The recruits filed in, eyes wide, fear sharp on their faces. One asked the question hanging in all their throats. "Why us, why here?" Elena loaded her weapon. "Because we lit a fire, and Scion doesn't put out flames, they smother them." The screens showed silhouettes moving through the trees. Not ragged, not reckless, perfect formations. "Scion operators," Rowan muttered. "God help us." Elena's voice cut him off. "God doesn't get clearance here." The first drone strike hit the outer wall. Concrete and steel shuddered, sparks raining. The recruits flinched. One muttered, "We're not ready for this." Elena turned, her eyes hard but steady. "You'll never feel ready, that's the point. Ready is a word, standing is a choice. Choose now." Something shifted in them then. Not courage, not yet, but the first ember of it. Rowan pointed at the map. "We need to hold the west gate. If it falls, the whole compound's open." Elena nodded. "Take 2 with you. I'll hold the east with the rest." Rowan hesitated. "You can't anchor a flank with recruits." Her voice was sharp, final. "I can move." He didn't argue again. The teams split. Boots pounded down separate corridors, rifles clutched tight. The compound shook again as another blast landed. At the east gate, Elena knelt behind shattered barricades. The recruits crouched beside her, adrenaline and terror in their veins. Shapes moved in the trees, silent, precise. "Count them," Elena whispered. 7, one recruit murmured. 10, another corrected. "Too many," the youngest said, his voice cracking. Elena's reply was calm. "Enough." The first wave hit. Shadows darting through moonlight, rifles flashing suppressed fire. Bullets sparked against concrete. The recruits fired back, sloppy, wild. "Control your breathing," Elena barked. "Aim where they'll be, not where they are." Her own rifle cracked once, twice. 2 silhouettes fell, no wasted bullets, no wasted motion. The recruits steadied, found rhythm, their shots sharpened. Still the enemy pressed closer, too disciplined, too many. One recruit screamed as a round tore through his shoulder. He fell back, clutching the wound. The youngest froze, panic flared in his eyes. Elena grabbed his collar, yanking him down behind cover. "Listen to me. He's bleeding, he's not gone. You keep him alive by standing. Do you hear me?" He nodded, tears in his eyes, but he nodded. They held minute by brutal minute, until silence fell. No more shadows moved in the trees. No more gunfire cracked. Just smoke and the ragged breathing of recruits who had never been this close to dying. Rowan's voice came through comms. "Westgate holding, casualties." "One down but breathing," Elena replied. "Scion pulled back for now." "For now," Elena echoed. She rose, her limp sharper, blood on her sleeve from dragging the wounded recruit to safety. Her face gave nothing away. The recruits looked at her with something new in their eyes. Not just fear, not just awe, something heavier. Respect. Later in the infirmary, the wounded recruit clenched his teeth as a medic worked. He looked up at Elena. "Thought I was gone," he muttered. "You weren't," she said. "Because of you." Her gaze softened. "Because of us." But when she turned away, the weight in her eyes was different. Rowan intercepted her in the hall. His voice was low, urgent. "You just held a gate with kids against one of the deadliest black units ever built. They should have been slaughtered." "They weren't," Elena said simply. "Because of you." She shook her head. "Because Scion wasn't trying to kill us. Not yet." Rowan frowned. "Then what the hell was this?" Her voice dropped, heavy. "A test. They wanted to see if I'd still fight." "And—" She met his eyes. For the first time, something like exhaustion cracked through her steel. "I did." That night Site Gray was quiet again. Too quiet. The recruits slept fitfully, some whispering prayers, others staring at ceilings that didn't answer back. Elena sat alone in the war room, the red emblem glowing faintly on the screen. Her reflection stared back at her, older, tired, but unbroken. She whispered softly, "Warden, I kept them standing." The emblem pulsed once, as if answering. But outside the walls, in the black of the forest, Scion operatives regrouped. One of them pressed a finger to his earpiece. "She still stands," he whispered. The distorted voice replied, cold and certain. "Then we break her where she can't stand back up." The forest swallowed their shapes. And Elena Vaughn, sitting in the silence, felt the truth she hadn't spoken to anyone. This wasn't the war starting again. It was the one that had never ended. What do you fear more, the enemy in front of you or the memory behind you? For Elena Vaughn, the two had finally become the same. 3 nights after the assault on Site Gray, the forest went silent. No birds, no wind, just the kind of stillness that tells you something is watching. Elena stood on the roof, her rifle across her chest, eyes scanning the tree line. She felt it before she saw it. A presence, familiar, heavy. Rowan joined her, jaw tight. "Perimeter sensors are blind. Someone's jamming us. They want us deaf before they come." "They're not coming," Elena said. Her voice was low, steady. "They're waiting." "For what?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because that night the waiting ended. At 200 the power cut. The compound dropped into darkness. Emergency lights flickered red. The emblem on the central console pulsed once, then vanished. The recruits scrambled, panic in their voices. Rowan barked orders, but even he knew this wasn't just another raid. This was the end game. Elena moved to the war room. The doors slid open without power. No motors, no hydraulics, just silence. Inside, the screens flickered to life, one by one, and there he was. Warden. Not flesh, not bone, a recording, a reconstruction. His face scarred, half-burned, eyes like molten glass, but his voice deep, steady, alive. "Elena," he said. The recruits froze at the sound of it. Rowan's eyes widened. Elena stepped forward, her breath caught. Her lips moved before she realized. "You're dead." His face tilted in something like a smile. Dead enough to haunt, alive enough to lead. The recruits whispered among themselves. One muttered, "Is that him?" Rowan's jaw clenched. "That's Scion's play." Warden's voice filled the room. "You left me, they found me, they built me, and now, Elena, I am them." The recruits stiffened. Scion hadn't just used her memories, they had weaponized them. Her eyes locked on the screen. "This isn't you. It's more me than what you remember. You carried guilt for 20 years, but guilt doesn't change truth. I chose to stay, and Scion chose to keep me." The recruits shifted, unsettled. Was it true? Could the ghost she carried have chosen differently than the way she remembered it? Rowan's voice was hard. "It's manipulation. They built a face out of scraps to break you." But Elena wasn't so sure. Her silence spoke louder than denial. Warden's voice grew colder. "You walk with children now. You think they can carry what Echo carried. They'll die, just like I did, just like you should have." The recruits flinched. Doubt rippled through them. Elena finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. "You're wrong. You always carried more than any of us. That's why you ordered me to leave you. That's why I listened." The screen flickered. His scarred face shifted, eyes narrowing. For the first time he looked uncertain. Rowan seized it. They can mimic him, they can't mimic his choices. They can't mimic who he was. The room vibrated. A low hum filled the air. Scion was moving outside, drones overhead, footsteps in the dark. The recruits looked at Elena, waiting, needing. She turned, eyes sharp again. "Gear up, this isn't about ghosts, this is about now." The compound erupted into motion. Boots slammed against concrete, weapons checked, breath steadied. Scion came in waves, shadows in the dark, drones slicing air with red beams. But this time, the recruits weren't the same. Fear hadn't vanished, but it had sharpened into something else. They moved as one, covering each other, calling shots, holding ground. Rowan fought at Elena's side, his voice cutting through gunfire. "They want you alive." "I know," she shot back. "Then we deny them." A drone exploded overhead. Fire lit the night. A recruit screamed but kept firing. Through it all, Elena moved like memory itself. Limp steady, eyes cold, rifle cracking with purpose. Until silence fell again. Bodies littered the outer yard. Drones smoked. The night held its breath. And then a figure stepped from the trees. Not a recording, not a ghost. A man. Scarred, burned, walking with a limp of his own. "Warden!" The recruits froze. Rowan cursed under his breath. Elena's rifle lifted. Her hands didn't tremble, but her chest did. His voice was raw, human. "You left me, but I didn't die. They found me. They made me theirs." The recruits whispered, "It's really him." Rowan spat, "Or what's left of him." Elena's voice broke the silence. "You ordered me to leave. You gave me that weight." His eyes glimmered. "And you carried it, all these years, but you don't have to anymore. Stand with me, Elena. Scion will bury the world's lies. Together we finish what Echo never could." The night held stillness like a blade. The recruits stared at her, waiting, afraid. Elena lowered her rifle, just slightly, enough to make Rowan's jaw clench. She stepped forward. Her voice was soft, almost tender. "You're right about one thing. I carried you every day, and I still do." For a moment, Warden's scarred face softened. Then her rifle snapped up. The shot echoed through the night. Warden staggered, eyes wide. Blood bloomed. His lips curved in something like a smile. "Still Echo," he whispered. And then he fell. The recruits were silent. Rowan's face was stone. Elena stood over the body, rifle lowered, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "I never left you, Warden, not once." The night air carried her words away. By dawn, the compound still stood. Smoke drifted. Recruits sat in silence, their faces pale but alive. Rowan walked to her side. His voice was low. "You killed the last piece of yourself that haunted you." "No," Elena said. Her eyes were tired but steady. "I carried him, and I'll carry him still. That's what Echo was. That's what it will always be." Rowan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Later, as the sun rose over Site Gray, the recruits gathered. They looked at her differently now, not as legend, not as ghost, but as proof, proof that broken things could still stand. She addressed them with few words. "Scion will come again. Ghosts don't vanish. But we don't live for ghosts. We live so others don't have to carry what we did." Her eyes lingered on each of them. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply stands. The recruits nodded, quiet, heavy, but resolute. And Elena Vaughn, survivor of Echo Zero, turned her face to the morning. Not lighter, not freer, but standing, still standing.